The judge had barely opened Marcus Whitmore's file when the atmosphere inside Courtroom 7C changed completely. Not dramatically, not like television. Something quieter than that. Something real. Judge Harold Benton stopped turning pages midway through the file. Then he slowly leaned back beneath the dull, fluorescent lights, while cold rain tapped softly against the courthouse windows behind him. Nobody moved. Even Logan Mercer's attorney finally stopped talking. The judge adjusted his glasses carefully before looking toward the court officer standing beside the door. "I want non-essential personnel removed from this courtroom," he said calmly. "And I'd like representatives from the lending companies to remain available." That was the exact moment Evelyn Whitmore looked at Marcus. Not angry, not confident, terrified. And sitting there beneath the buzzing courthouse lights in downtown Kansas City, listening to old heating vents rattle overhead, Marcus realized something strange. For the first time in nearly a year, he wasn't the one afraid anymore. Marcus Whitmore was 58 years old, and for most of his life, he had driven trucks through weather that would make younger men quit before sunrise. He had started Whitmore Freight Solutions in 1994 with one used Freightliner and $14,000 borrowed from his uncle. Back then, the sleeper cab heater barely worked during winter routes through Missouri and Kansas. Marcus still remembered waking up near Wichita one January morning with ice frozen along the inside of the windshield. Some nights he slept wearing gloves. Some nights dinner came from gas station microwaves that smelled like burnt plastic and stale coffee. But he kept driving anyway. Over the years, Marcus learned how to repair frozen brake lines himself because mechanics cost money he didn't have. He learned how to stay awake during overnight hauls with nothing but black coffee and country radio humming through cracked speakers. He learned how to survive recessions, diesel spikes, broken transmissions, and contracts that vanished overnight. 30 years later, Whitmore Freight Solutions owned 23 trucks running freight routes across Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Texas. Nothing flashy. Farm equipment, warehouse goods, industrial machine parts, the kind of business people only noticed when deliveries stopped arriving. And honestly, Marcus preferred it that way. At his age, he wasn't trying to become rich anymore. He wanted something simpler now. Fewer routes, smaller headaches, more mornings fishing near Lake Giacomo, maybe enough extra savings to help his daughter Claire someday with her son's college tuition. That had been the plan. Then Evelyn Whitmore entered his life. Marcus met her 11 years earlier during a church fundraiser in Overland Park. They were both divorced. Both lonely in the quiet way middle-aged people rarely admitted out loud. Evelyn had a warm laugh that softened rooms. She made homemade chicken soup during winter storms. She remembered his blood pressure medication before he did. Some mornings she left coffee beside his chair before dawn dispatch calls started ringing. Little things. That was how trust always began. And then there was Logan Mercer, Evelyn's son from her first marriage. 31 years old, sharp smile, expensive haircut, fast talker. Logan always smelled like cologne Marcus suspected cost more than his first truck payment. At first, Logan acted respectful. He called Marcus Sir, rode along on deliveries occasionally, told people he admired what Marcus had built from nothing. Marcus believed him. God help him, he really did. Because after years of eating alone in silent kitchens and falling asleep in front of television reruns, Marcus wanted badly to believe he had finally found something peaceful at the end of his life. He just didn't realize yet how expensive that peace would become. At first, the requests were small enough for Marcus Whitmore to ignore. That was how Logan Mercer operated. Never too much all at once, never enough to start a real argument. One Friday evening, Logan showed up at the house while Marcus was reviewing dispatch schedules at the kitchen counter. "Car payment's behind," Logan said casually, leaning against the refrigerator. "Just hit a rough month." Marcus barely looked up from the paperwork. "How much?" $600. Evelyn stood at the stove stirring soup while soft jazz played from a speaker near the window. She didn't turn around when she spoke. He's embarrassed already, Marcus. That sentence alone usually ended the conversation. Marcus sighed quietly and reached for his wallet. A few weeks later, it was rent money. Then overdue insurance. Then a temporary investment into an online sales business Logan claimed would double within months. Every problem sounded temporary when Logan explained it. That was part of his talent. The kid could turn failure into optimism faster than most people could pour coffee. Meanwhile, Marcus kept waking up before dawn every morning, managing 23 trucks through Midwest weather. Ice storms, delayed freight, drivers calling at 4:30 in the morning because tires blew outside Tulsa, or dispatch systems crashed during overnight routes. Real work. The kind that exhausted your bones instead of just your attention span. One afternoon, Marcus sat inside his warehouse office near Independence reviewing fuel invoices when Victor Hayes walked in carrying shipping manifests. Victor had worked with Marcus for nearly 15 years. Former Army mechanic, quiet man, reliable. Victor dropped the paperwork onto the desk. "You seen your boy online lately?" he asked carefully. Marcus frowned slightly. "What now?" Victor pulled out his phone. There was Logan standing beside a rented Lamborghini somewhere in Las Vegas, wearing sunglasses and holding champagne, while electronic music blasted in the background. Build, scale, dominate. That caption sat across the video in gold letters. Marcus stared at the screen silently. Then he handed the phone back. "Kid likes attention," he muttered. Victor hesitated before answering. "Attention's expensive." Marcus laughed softly, but something sour twisted in his stomach. Because Victor was right, the numbers never matched. Logan constantly talked about passive income, branding opportunities, scaling assets, and financial freedom. But somehow he always needed help paying basic bills. And Evelyn always defended him. "He just didn't grow up with your discipline." "Logan's trying to find his direction." "You know how hard things are for young people now." Marcus heard those explanations so often they started blending into background noise. The truth was, Marcus kept helping because peace inside the house mattered more to him than money. After 50, loneliness changes shape. People stop fearing drama. They start fearing silence. One cold October night, Marcus returned home after dealing with a breakdown near Amarillo for nearly 14 hours straight. His shoulders ached. Diesel smell still clung to his jacket. Evelyn had left meatloaf warming inside the oven. Logan sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. Bad sign already. Whenever Logan waited around after dinner, money usually followed. "Need a little help," Logan said carefully. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. "How little?" Logan cleared his throat. 12,000. Marcus stared at him. "For what?" Logan looked embarrassed for exactly 2 seconds. Sports betting apps." The kitchen went completely silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator. Marcus actually laughed once in disbelief. $12,000? On football games? "It got away from me." "No," Marcus said quietly. "You let it get away from you." Logan rolled his eyes immediately. "You act like I killed somebody." Evelyn stepped in before Marcus could answer. "He's my son, Marcus." There it was again, that sentence. Like motherhood itself erased responsibility. Marcus looked toward the dark kitchen window while cold rain tapped against the glass outside. "When does helping stop being helping?" he asked softly. Neither of them answered. 3 days later, Logan posted photos from a rooftop bar in Austin, holding a bottle of tequila Marcus knew cost more than some drivers earned in a week. And for the first time, Marcus felt something dangerous growing underneath his exhaustion. Not anger. Suspicion. Winter arrived early that year. Cold rain swept across Kansas City for nearly a week straight, coating warehouse yards with dirty slush, while gray clouds hung low over the interstate. Marcus Whitmore spent most of December fighting delayed freight schedules and frozen trailer brakes across Missouri and Oklahoma. By the time Christmas lights appeared around suburban neighborhoods, Marcus already looked exhausted. That was exactly when Logan Mercer arrived with his real opportunity. "It's different this time," Logan said one evening while sitting at the kitchen table. "Freight brokerage. Serious money, Marcus." Marcus loosened his work boots near the door and rubbed his aching neck. "I'm serious," Logan continued quickly. I've already got investors interested. That word again. Investors. Logan loved words that sounded expensive. Evelyn stepped beside Marcus, holding a fresh cup of coffee before he even asked. You should at least listen, she said softly. Marcus sighed and sat down heavily at the dining table. Outside, freezing rain rattled softly against the windows while headlights moved slowly through the neighborhood darkness. Logan immediately spread paperwork across the table. Contracts, business filings, loan forms, transportation agreements. Most of it looked complicated enough to discourage questions. Mostly procedural stuff, Logan explained casually. Brokerage startup paperwork. Temporary guarantees so lenders take the company seriously. Marcus skimmed through several pages while drinking coffee. Freight terminology covered nearly every document. Dispatch systems, carrier agreements, commercial route authorizations. Logan had learned enough trucking language over the years, hanging around Whitmore Freight Solutions, to sound believable. That was the dangerous part. Nothing felt obviously insane in the moment. Evelyn placed a slice of homemade peach pie beside Marcus's coffee mug and rested a hand gently against his shoulder. You work too hard, she whispered. Marcus smiled faintly. Small comforts lowered defenses faster than arguments ever could. He signed where Logan pointed. 1 page. Then another. Then several more. The entire thing took less than 20 minutes. By midnight, the paperwork sat stacked neatly inside Logan's leather folder, while rain continued tapping against the windows outside. Marcus barely thought about it afterward. Life moved on. Dispatch calls. Fuel invoices. Driver shortages. Transmission failures. Real problems. Then the collection calls started. The first one arrived 3 weeks later, while Marcus stood inside the warehouse loading bay, helping Victor Hayes inspect damaged cargo straps. Whitmore Freight Solutions, Marcus answered distractedly. A man with a sharp Cleveland accent immediately asked about overdue commercial obligations connected to Bradford Capital Lending. Marcus frowned. I think you've got the wrong number. Mr. Whitmore, the man replied carefully. This account reflects personal guarantee responsibility exceeding $750,000. Marcus nearly dropped the phone. What? Victor looked over immediately. Marcus stepped away from the loading dock noise. There's been some mistake, he said slowly. But the man kept talking. Loan defaults, commercial guarantees, transportation asset collateral, missed payment schedules. Marcus felt cold spread through his chest. So what company is this tied to? He asked quietly. The answer hit harder than the amount itself. Whitmore Freight Solutions. Marcus hung up and immediately called Logan. What the hell did you put my name on? Logan answered too quickly. Relax. Don't tell me to relax. It's temporary pressure from lenders. You told me those were support agreements. They are. No! Marcus snapped. Those numbers don't happen accidentally. Logan's voice hardened immediately. You signed the paperwork. Marcus felt something dangerous shift inside him. I signed what you showed me. Evelyn entered the kitchen halfway through the argument. What's happening? Marcus stared at her while holding the phone tightly enough for his knuckles to pale. $750,000, he said quietly. Evelyn's face lost color instantly, but Logan kept talking over the phone. Marcus, if you just stay calm. Calm? Marcus interrupted. You tied my company to $750,000? Temporary financing. Marcus laughed once, not because anything felt funny, because disbelief sometimes sounded exactly like laughter. Then Evelyn stepped carefully between them. He's under pressure, she whispered. Marcus looked at her slowly. Pressure. Funny word for fraud. And standing there beneath the kitchen lights while rain hammered against the dark windows outside, Marcus experienced the first real feeling that something inside his own home had quietly turned against him. The collection calls did not stop after that night. If anything, they multiplied. Every morning brought new voicemails from lenders Marcus Whitmore had never heard of before. Some sounded polite, others sounded impatient. One man threatened legal escalation before Marcus even finished introducing himself. By the second week, Marcus stopped answering unknown numbers entirely, but the pressure followed him anyway. One rainy afternoon, 2 men in dark jackets arrived at Whitmore Freight Solutions asking questions about commercial transportation guarantees tied to company assets. Victor Hayes intercepted them near the loading dock, while Marcus finished reviewing dispatch logs inside the warehouse office. A few minutes later, Victor stepped inside and quietly shut the office door behind him. "Boss," he said carefully, "something feels wrong here." Marcus looked up from the desk. "What do you mean?" Victor lowered his voice. "They knew too much." Marcus frowned. "Too much how?" "Account numbers, trailer, IDs, route information." Victor hesitated. "Stuff outside lenders shouldn't know that easily." That sentence stayed with Marcus long after the men left. By evening, the warehouse had emptied. Trucks sat quietly beneath yellow security lights, while freezing rain rattled across the metal roof overhead. Marcus remained alone inside his office. Stacks of copied paperwork covered the desk. For the first time since Logan's business opportunity, Marcus forced himself to actually study every document carefully. Page after page, signature after signature. Commercial guarantees, business authorizations, asset collateral filings. Most of it looked legitimate at first glance. Then Marcus noticed something strange. One signature looked too clean, too smooth. At first, he couldn't explain why it bothered him. It carried his name perfectly. Marcus Whitmore, exactly the way he signed official documents. But after 30 years driving freight routes through truck stops, warehouses, fuel stations, and freezing winters, Marcus knew something most people never considered. Real signatures aged badly. They became messy, uneven pressure marks, slanted lines, tiny inconsistencies from exhaustion or hurried writing. But this signature looked careful, studied, almost artistic. Marcus slowly opened his desk drawer and removed an old tax return from 3 years earlier. Then he placed both papers beneath the lamp. For several long seconds, he simply stared. And then his stomach dropped. The loan signature had been traced. Whoever copied it had recreated the shape perfectly, but missed the natural pressure changes in Marcus's handwriting. It looked like Marcus Whitmore, but it did not move like him. Marcus leaned back slowly in his chair while rain hammered against the warehouse roof outside. Suddenly, every moment from the past year replayed differently in his head. The coffee, the pie, the paperwork, the soft conversations after exhausting workdays. All of it. He sat there until nearly 2 a.m. while cold realization settled deeper into his chest. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped being Evelyn's husband and become their financial safety net. The next morning, Marcus drove downtown before sunrise. He visited business records offices across Kansas City, gathering every filing connected to Logan's brokerage company. Hours passed beneath fluorescent lights and government office silence. The deeper Marcus looked, the worse things became. LLCs he had never heard of. Commercial authorizations carrying his name. Transportation agreements tied directly to Whitmore Freight Solutions. Then Marcus found the document that nearly made him dizzy. One filing listed his warehouse property as collateral. 30 years. 30 years building that company from frozen truck cabs and unpaid overtime. And Logan had tied it to fraudulent loans in less than 6 months. Marcus walked outside into cold rain and stood beside a parking meter, breathing hard. For one dangerous moment, he considered paying everything quietly. Selling trucks, draining retirement accounts, saving the marriage. Then his phone buzzed. A new social media post from Logan appeared across the screen. Logan stood inside a luxury penthouse suite somewhere in Las Vegas, holding a glass of champagne while city lights glowed behind him. The caption read, "Generational wealth takes risk." Marcus stared at the photo for a very long time, and slowly, beneath the fear and humiliation, something colder began taking shape inside him. Anger. Marcus Whitmore did not sleep that night. He sat inside his warehouse office until almost dawn, while rain hammered against the roof overhead and idling trucks hummed quietly beyond the loading bays. Every few minutes, he tried convincing himself there had to be another explanation. Maybe Logan misunderstood the paperwork. Maybe lenders made clerical mistakes. Maybe Evelyn had no idea what her son was actually doing. But deep down, Marcus already knew the truth. People did not accidentally forge signatures across multiple commercial loan documents. By 6 a.m, He finally drove home through a freezing drizzle with a pounding headache behind his eyes. Evelyn was already awake in the kitchen. She stood beside the stove wearing an oversized gray cardigan while coffee brewed softly behind her. The smell normally comforted Marcus. That morning, it almost made him angry. "Long night?" she asked gently. Marcus studied her face carefully. How could someone look this calm while his entire life was collapsing? For one dangerous second, he nearly slammed the forged paperwork across the counter and demanded answers immediately. But instinct stopped him. Instead, he forced himself to nod. "Transmission issue near Tulsa," he muttered. Evelyn walked closer and kissed his cheek lightly. "I made eggs." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. That hurt worse than yelling would have, because kindness mixed with betrayal confused the heart in ways anger never could. Later that afternoon, Marcus drove to Lee's Summit, carrying 2 banker boxes filled with copied records and loan documents. Eleanor Graves opened the door before he even knocked twice. Eleanor had spent nearly 30 years working trucking compliance investigations across Missouri and Kansas. Marcus trusted her judgment more than most attorneys. She led him inside without wasting time. "Show me everything." For nearly 4 hours, Eleanor reviewed paperwork across her dining room table while old jazz music played quietly in the background. Every now and then, she sighed softly or adjusted her glasses. That scared Marcus more than panic would have. Finally, near sunset, Eleanor removed one document from the stack and slid it across the table. "Look carefully," she said. Marcus stared down at the page. Then his chest tightened. Witness signatures, notary confirmations, verification initials, and there, written clearly near the bottom of the page, Evelyn Whitmore. Marcus felt cold spread through his body. Eleanor slowly handed him another packet, then another, then another. 4 separate loan files, all carrying Evelyn's signature as witness. Marcus stared silently at the papers while evening shadows stretched across the dining room walls. "She knew," Eleanor said quietly. Marcus swallowed hard. "She's not stupid," he answered. Those words sat heavily between them. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet. Marcus thought about all the nights Evelyn brought him coffee while Logan spread paperwork across the kitchen table. All the soft conversations, all the reassuring smiles, all the moments Marcus lowered his guard because he trusted the woman standing beside him. And now every memory felt poisoned. Eleanor leaned back carefully. "There's more." Marcus looked up slowly. "One of these lenders," she continued, "is already connected to an active federal investigation involving fake freight invoices and shell transportation companies." Marcus felt dizzy. Commercial fraud, identity misuse, tax violations. The kind of cases that buried innocent people if their names appeared in the wrong paperwork. "You need an attorney immediately," Eleanor said. Marcus rubbed both hands across his tired face. "I can't afford some giant legal war." Eleanor's expression hardened. "You can't afford not to." That night, Marcus stopped at a truck stop diner outside Independence before heading home. He sat alone in a corner booth drinking stale coffee while truckers laughed near the counter and football highlights flashed silently across mounted televisions. Normal life continued around him while his own felt shattered. For one weak moment, Marcus considered paying everything himself. Sell trucks, drain retirement, protect Evelyn, keep the marriage alive somehow. Then his phone buzzed again. Another post from Logan. Luxury rooftop pool, designer sunglasses, a caption about building generational wealth. Marcus stared at the glowing screen while exhaustion slowly hardened into something colder. Because Logan Mercer had never built anything. He consumed things, and suddenly, Marcus realized something terrifying. Evelyn had known that all along. Marcus Whitmore met attorney Samuel Crawford 3 days later in a narrow brick office building overlooking downtown Kansas City. The office smelled faintly like old paper, coffee, and winter air leaking through ancient windows. Samuel looked exactly like the kind of lawyer Marcus trusted immediately. Late 60s. Gray suspenders. Calm eyes. No polished salesman energy. Just quiet experience. Samuel spent nearly an hour reviewing the documents without interrupting once. The only sounds inside the office came from pages turning and traffic humming outside the frosted windows. Finally, Samuel leaned back slowly in his chair. "You understand this may move beyond civil court?" he asked. Marcus nodded tiredly. And you understand your wife may have exposure here." That sentence hurt worse than Marcus expected, not because it surprised him anymore, because hearing it spoken aloud made everything permanent. Samuel folded his hands carefully across the desk. "Most people in your position settle quietly," he said. "Pay something. Protect appearances." Marcus stared out the office window toward gray February clouds hanging over Kansas City. For a moment, the idea sounded tempting. Sell half the trucks. Drain retirement accounts. End the humiliation before neighbors, drivers, lenders, and family learned the full story. But then he remembered Logan standing beside rented luxury cars talking online about generational wealth, while using Whitmore freight solutions like a personal credit card. Something inside Marcus hardened again. "I'm not paying for fraud," he said quietly. Samuel studied him for several seconds before nodding once. "Then we prepare carefully." The next several weeks became the most exhausting period of Marcus's life. Every spare hour disappeared into paperwork. Fuel receipts, dispatch logs, DOT driving records, GPS timelines, motel check-ins, commercial filings, phone records. Marcus turned his warehouse office into something halfway between a trucking company and an investigation center. Stacks of binders covered every surface. Victor Hayes quietly helped organize shipment timelines late into the evenings without asking unnecessary questions. One snowy night, Victor placed another folder onto the desk and shook his head. "Never seen anything like this," he muttered. Marcus barely looked up. "Neither have I." The breakthrough arrived near midnight 2 weeks later. Marcus sat alone beneath a flickering desk lamp, reviewing loan authorizations connected to one of the largest fraudulent filings. Samuel had circled the signing date earlier that afternoon. October 14th. Marcus frowned at the document. Something about the date bothered him immediately. Then he remembered. October 14th, he had been outside Amarillo, Texas, delivering agricultural equipment during an overnight freight emergency. Truckers remembered dates differently than most people. Routes became memories. Storms became timestamps. Marcus suddenly moved faster. He pulled old dispatch records from storage boxes, then fuel receipts, then motel invoices. Within 30 minutes, paperwork covered the entire office floor. And there it was. Proof. Fuel purchase in Amarillo at 4:12 p.m. DOT electronic log records. Dispatch GPS location reports. Motel check-in timestamped 9:18 p.m. The fraudulent loan paperwork claimed Marcus signed documents inside Kansas City that same evening. Impossible. Marcus sat back slowly in his chair, while cold adrenaline spread through his chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, he stopped feeling helpless. Because the evidence didn't just prove innocence, it proved someone believed he would never fight back hard enough to uncover the truth. Outside the warehouse, freezing rain tapped against parked trailers, while yellow security lights reflected across wet pavement. Marcus stood near the office window, looking out at the 23 trucks he had spent 3 decades building. Missed birthdays for, missed funerals for, sacrificed surgeries and holidays for. And suddenly his fear transformed completely. Not into confidence, into anger sharpened by betrayal. That same night, Marcus drove home after midnight. The house sat dark, except for the kitchen light glowing softly near the back windows. Evelyn was still awake. Marcus paused inside the driveway, staring at the warm, yellow light through falling rain. For years, that kitchen had represented safety, home, peace after endless highway miles. Now it felt different, like a place where someone smiled while quietly helping destroy him. Marcus remained inside the truck for nearly 10 minutes before finally shutting off the engine. Then he grabbed the thick black evidence binder from the passenger seat and walked toward the house. Because somewhere deep down, Marcus already understood something important. This marriage was no longer about saving. It was about surviving. The morning of the hearing arrived cold and gray over Kansas City. Dirty snow clung to curbs beside downtown streets, while freezing drizzle drifted across traffic lights and courthouse windows. Marcus Whitmore parked inside the Jackson County Courthouse garage shortly before 8 in the morning and sat silently inside his truck for a long moment. Rain slid slowly across the windshield. His hands were steady. That surprised him. For weeks, Marcus had imagined this day ending badly. Losing Whitmore Freight Solutions, losing retirement, losing the reputation he had spent 30 years building one freight route at a time. But something changed in a man after he already accepted the worst possibility. Fear lost part of its power. Marcus grabbed the thick black evidence binder from the passenger seat and stepped into the freezing air. The courthouse smelled like wet coats, burnt coffee, and old paper. Somewhere farther down the hallway, handcuffs rattled briefly while a deputy instructed someone to keep moving. Real courthouse sounds, not television drama. Marcus found Courtroom 7C halfway down the corridor. Logan Mercer was already there. Navy suit, expensive watch, perfect haircut, trying very hard to appear calm. But Marcus noticed something immediately. Logan's shoes were scuffed near the toes. Small detail, still important. People falling apart always stopped noticing little things first. Evelyn sat beside him, wearing the cream-colored sweater Marcus had bought her 2 Christmases earlier. Her face looked pale beneath the fluorescent lights, and she twisted a tissue nervously between both hands. When she finally looked toward Marcus, her eyes immediately dropped again. That hurt more than open anger would have. Logan's attorney approached a few minutes before the hearing began. Tall man, expensive suit, voice polished smooth from years inside courtrooms. "Mr. Whitmore," he said quietly, "there's still time to resolve this privately." Meaning pay quietly, protect appearances, swallow the damage. Marcus almost said yes. For 5 dangerous seconds, standing beneath flickering courthouse lights, while strangers shuffled legal folders around him, surrender sounded peaceful. At his age, peace often felt more valuable than pride. Then Marcus remembered the forged signatures, the warehouse collateral filings, Logan posing online beside luxury cars while gambling with Marcus's entire company. "No," Marcus answered simply. The attorney gave a disappointed nod. "Very well." A few minutes later, everyone entered the courtroom. Old wooden benches lined the room beneath buzzing fluorescent panels. Rain tapped softly against tall courthouse windows, while deputies organized paperwork near the judge's bench. Judge Harold Benton entered precisely at 9. Nobody wasted time. Logan's side presented first. Their argument depended on one simple narrative. Marcus Whitmore willingly backed Logan's freight brokerage startup, then changed his mind after the debt became overwhelming. The attorney presented printed text messages, selective emails, claims about family promises, and verbal agreements. He painted Logan as an ambitious young businessman abandoned by a cold, aging stepfather trying to protect his own money. And honestly, for a little while, it worked. Even Marcus could feel how believable the story sounded from the outside. Successful older businessman, struggling younger entrepreneur, family dispute over money. Simple, clean, human. Judge Benton asked Marcus several direct questions while reviewing the filings carefully. Marcus answered calmly, but pressure tightened behind his ribs with every passing minute. Then Evelyn testified. That nearly broke him. Not because she yelled, because she sounded sincere. Quiet voice, watery eyes. "Marcus believed in Logan," she said softly. The courtroom became completely still. He wanted Logan involved in the business. Part of that was true, which made the lies more dangerous. Real manipulation usually buried itself inside pieces of truth. Evelyn looked toward Marcus briefly before continuing. "I think things just spiraled beyond anyone's control." Marcus stared down at the table while she spoke. Out of control. Like nobody caused any of this. Like Whitmore Freight Solutions accidentally tied itself to fraudulent commercial loans. By the time her testimony ended, Logan's attorney looked confident again. Marcus felt exhaustion settling deep into his chest. Then Judge Benton turned toward him. "Mr. Whitmore," the judge said calmly, "you may present your response." Marcus stood slowly. His knees cracked loudly enough for the front row to hear. One deputy smirked slightly. Marcus carried the thick black binder toward the front table and placed it down carefully. No dramatic speech. No anger. He was too tired for theatrics now. He opened the binder slowly. "And finally, after months of silence, Marcus Whitmore prepared to show the courtroom the truth. Marcus Whitmore opened the binder slowly beneath the fluorescent courtroom lights, while rain tapped softly against the tall windows behind the judge's bench. Nobody moved. Even Logan Mercer stopped shifting in his chair. Marcus removed the first document carefully and handed copies toward the clerk. "I'd like to address one filing first," he said calmly. Judge Harold Benton adjusted his glasses while reviewing the page. Logan's attorney leaned forward immediately. "That document reflects one of several valid commercial guarantees." "No," Marcus interrupted quietly. "It reflects fraud." The courtroom became still. Not dramatic silence, the uncomfortable kind. The kind where people suddenly realized the conversation might be heading somewhere dangerous. Marcus opened the binder again. "This authorization was supposedly signed by me on October 14th in Kansas City." The attorney nodded confidently. "Yes." Marcus slid another set of documents across the table. "On October 14th, he continued evenly, "I was outside Amarillo, Texas, delivering agricultural equipment." Judge Benton looked up slightly. Marcus continued speaking. "Page 12 contains my Department of Transportation electronic driving logs. Page 13 contains fuel purchases time-stamped in Amarillo. Page 14 contains motel check-in records at 9:18 p.m. The courtroom grew quieter with every sentence. Marcus handed another document toward the bench. "GPS dispatch records are highlighted in yellow." Judge Benton studied the pages silently. Across the room, Logan shifted uncomfortably for the first time all morning. His attorney started flipping through paperwork faster now. Marcus wasn't finished. "Page 22, he said calmly, "contains a notarized filing connected to Whitmore Freight Solutions collateral authorization." Judge Benton's eyes narrowed slightly while reviewing the page. Then he looked toward Logan's attorney. "Counselor?" the judge asked quietly. "Why is this filing connected to an active commercial fraud investigation involving Bradford Capital Lending?" That changed the room instantly. Marcus saw it happen in real time. Logan stopped pretending to relax. One representative from the lending company visibly stiffened beside the back wall. Even Evelyn's face lost color. The attorney recovered quickly. "Your Honor, I believe that reference is being interpreted without proper context." Marcus slid another folder forward. "Then maybe these emails provide context." That was the moment everything truly began collapsing. Judge Benton reviewed the printed messages carefully, while the courtroom sat frozen beneath the steady hum of fluorescent lights. Most of the emails looked harmless at first. Scheduling discussions, paperwork coordination, general conversations between Evelyn and Logan. Then the judge stopped reading. He adjusted the page closer beneath the lamp and read one line twice. "Don't overload him with details after work. He signs faster when he's tired." Nobody breathed. Outside, rain continued tapping softly against courthouse windows, while someone near the back coughed nervously. Marcus kept his eyes forward. He did not look at Evelyn. Couldn't. Logan's attorney cleared his throat. "Your Honor, those statements are being unfairly interpreted out of emotional context." Judge Benton slowly raised one hand. Silence. Then he removed his glasses carefully and leaned back in his chair. Marcus still remembered the small sound papers made sliding beneath the judge's fingertips. Quiet sound. Heavy sound. Finally, the judge looked toward the court officer near the courtroom doors. "I want non-essential personnel removed from this courtroom," he said calmly. The words changed the atmosphere immediately. Two spectators from another hearing quietly gathered their belongings and left without speaking. The heavy courtroom doors closed behind them with a dull thud. Now the room felt smaller, tighter, dangerous. Judge Benton looked toward the lender representatives seated near the back. "You will remain available for further questioning." One of the men immediately loosened his tie. Marcus noticed sweat gathering near the man's collar despite the cold room. Logan no longer looked confident now. His leg bounced uncontrollably beneath the defense table while his attorney whispered rapidly beside him. Evelyn stared downward at folded hands trembling in her lap. And for the first time in nearly a year, Marcus felt something shift inside himself. Not relief, not victory. Balance. Because for months, the fear had belonged entirely to him. Now it belonged to everyone else in the room. Judge Benton lowered his eyes back toward the evidence binder. Then he asked quietly, "Mr. Whitmore, Do you have additional documentation? Marcus looked directly at the judge. Yes, Your Honor, he answered. And across the courtroom, Logan Mercer finally began to panic. The atmosphere inside Courtroom 7C changed completely after that. A few minutes earlier, Logan Mercer had looked irritated. Now he looked afraid. Judge Harold Benton spent several long moments reviewing Marcus Whitmore's evidence, while rain tapped steadily against the courthouse windows behind him. Nobody spoke. Nobody even shifted loudly in their seats anymore. The courtroom had stopped feeling like a family financial dispute. Now it felt like something far more dangerous. Finally, Judge Benton looked toward the representatives from Bradford Capital Lending seated near the back wall. Who verified these commercial guarantees? He asked calmly. One of the men cleared his throat nervously. Our underwriting department processed the documents according to standard. That was not my question, the judge interrupted. The man swallowed hard. Judge Benton's voice remained calm, but somehow that made the room feel even colder. Who directly verified ownership authorization from Whitmore Freight Solutions? Silence. The lender representative adjusted his tie again. We relied on submitted documentation and witness verification. The judge lifted one of the forged files slowly. Documentation now connected to possible fraud. No one argued. Marcus sat quietly at the front table, watching years of pressure slowly move away from his shoulders, inch by inch. Not disappear completely. Just shift toward the people responsible for creating the disaster. Then Judge Benton turned toward Logan. Mr. Mercer, he said evenly, did you personally witness Mr. Whitmore signing these documents? Logan answered too quickly. Yes, sir. Marcus saw the panic immediately after the words left his mouth. Judge Benton calmly slid the Amarillo evidence packet forward. Interesting, he said quietly. Because according to Department of Transportation records, fuel receipts, dispatch GPS tracking, and motel timestamps, Mr. Whitmore was approximately 600 miles away. Silence filled the courtroom. Absolute silence. Marcus watched Logan carefully at that exact moment. That was when the confidence finally disappeared completely. Not fear of embarrassment. Fear of consequences. Real consequences. Logan's attorney leaned closer, whispering urgently beside him now. Evelyn looked pale enough to faint. Then one of the lender attorneys made a mistake. With respect, Your Honor, he began carefully. Mr. Whitmore clearly exercised poor oversight regarding his business documentation. Something about that sentence irritated Marcus more deeply than he expected. 30 years? 30 years building Whitmore Freight Solutions through recessions, breakdowns, fuel spikes, and brutal Midwest winters. He had slept inside frozen truck cabs so payroll checks cleared on time. Missed birthdays, missed funerals, missed surgeries. And now, some attorney sitting safely behind polished courtroom tables wanted to describe him as irresponsible. Before Marcus could respond, Judge Benton did it for him. Poor oversight, the judge repeated coldly, is not the same thing as identity fraud. The courtroom immediately fell silent again. Logan's breathing had become audible by then. Quick, uneven. Evelyn reached toward his arm gently. Logan? He jerked away sharply. And suddenly the entire illusion shattered. Mom said he'd cave. Logan snapped loudly. He always caves when things get uncomfortable. The words echoed across the courtroom harder than Logan probably intended. Even he realized it immediately. Too late. Evelyn closed her eyes like she had been slapped. Judge Benton leaned back slowly in his chair. Well, he said quietly, that's illuminating. Logan's attorney looked physically sick. Marcus did not feel victorious hearing any of it. That surprised him most. For months, he had imagined this moment differently. Anger, satisfaction, revenge. But sitting there watching Logan unravel beside Evelyn, Marcus mostly felt tired. Deep tired. The kind that settled inside a man after loving people longer than he should have. Judge Benton continued reviewing evidence for several more minutes before finally turning toward Evelyn. Mrs. Whitmore, he asked calmly, did you knowingly witness commercial loan authorizations your husband did not fully understand? Evelyn looked toward Logan first. That alone answered everything. Then tears filled her eyes. I thought, she whispered weakly, I thought he understood more than he did. Judge Benton's expression hardened immediately. That was not my question. Evelyn began crying quietly after that. Not dramatic sobbing. The controlled kind older people used when trying desperately not to fall apart in public. Marcus looked away, because despite everything, seeing her cry still hurt. That was the cruel part about betrayal. Love rarely disappeared at the same speed trust did. Finally, Judge Benton closed the evidence binder. The court finds serious concern regarding falsified financial filings, identity misrepresentation, improper collateral authorization, and possible commercial fraud violations. Every word landed heavily inside the silent room. This matter will be referred for further investigation immediately. No handcuffs appeared. No dramatic arrests happened. Real life rarely looked cinematic. But the shift inside that courtroom became undeniable. The lenders stopped looking at Marcus Whitmore like the problem and started looking directly at Logan Mercer instead. 8 months after the hearing, Marcus Whitmore sold truck number 14, an old Freightliner Cascadia with nearly 900,000 miles on it. 10 years earlier, Marcus probably would have rebuilt the transmission himself just to keep another truck running. But somewhere between the courtroom, the investigations, and the divorce papers, something inside him had changed. Peace mattered more now. More than expansion, more than proving anything to anybody. So Marcus downsized Whitmore Freight Solutions slowly over the summer. He sold 8 trucks altogether and cut back routes across Texas and Oklahoma. Some drivers left for larger companies. The loyal ones stayed. Victor Hayes stayed. That mattered more than Marcus ever said aloud. By autumn, Marcus had moved into a smaller house near Lake Giacomo. Nothing fancy. Small backyard. Quiet neighborhood. Garage barely large enough for fishing gear and old toolboxes. The first night there felt strange. No footsteps upstairs. No television humming from another room. No tension waiting silently around kitchen corners. Just quiet. Funny thing about silence after 50. Sometimes it feels lonely. Sometimes it feels peaceful. Depends entirely on what a person escaped from. The legal investigations kept moving without Marcus needing to chase them anymore. Logan Mercer ended up facing multiple financial inquiries tied to fraudulent filings and commercial lending violations. Marcus heard rumors through attorneys and trucking contacts occasionally, but after a while he stopped asking for updates. There was no satisfaction left in it anymore. Only exhaustion. Evelyn emailed several times over those months. Most messages arrived late at night. Long apologies, confused explanations, regret tangled together with loneliness. One message blamed Logan's manipulation. Another blamed herself. One simply said, "I miss our old life." That message stayed with Marcus longer than he expected. Because the uncomfortable truth was this: bad relationships were not miserable every second. If they were, nobody would stay. Marcus missed parts of their old life too. Morning coffee, winter dinners, quiet conversations after long freight runs. But trust, once broken deeply enough, changed shape permanently. Marcus never answered the emails, not because he hated Evelyn, because he finally understood something important. Forgiveness and reconciliation were not the same thing. Then, one September afternoon, Evelyn called unexpectedly while Marcus sat outside a bait shop near Lake Giacomo, watching clouds drift across gray water. Her voice sounded smaller than he remembered. Logan had drained most of her savings, covering legal expenses and debts. She was leaving the house, needed help securing an apartment. For one dangerous second, Marcus felt the old instinct return immediately. Fix it. Rescue everyone. Keep peace at all costs. That reflex had controlled most of his adult life. But this time, something felt different. Marcus stared quietly across the water before answering. "I'll help with the deposit once," he said calmly. "That's all." Long silence followed. Then Evelyn started crying softly. "Why would you still help me after everything?" Marcus thought about that carefully before answering. "Because helping someone once is different than carrying them forever." 2 weeks later, he helped her move into a small apartment on the west side of Kansas City. Mostly empty rooms, cheap carpeting, tired walls. At one point, Evelyn stopped beside the kitchen, holding an old framed photograph from their vacation years earlier in the Ozarks. You remember this cabin? She asked softly. Marcus nodded. Rainstorms, cheap whiskey, late-night laughter on the porch, back when life still felt simple. Evelyn looked at him carefully. We could still fix this. That sentence hurt more than Marcus expected, because part of him wanted to believe it. 11 years was a long time to erase. But some damage changed people permanently once trust disappeared. Marcus shook his head gently. No, he said quietly. I don't think we can. Evelyn cried silently after that while Marcus carried the last box toward the door. And strangely enough, he did not feel anger walking away. Only sadness. Clean sadness, the kind that finally told the truth after years of excuses. Life slowly settled into routine afterward. Coffee at the Copper Lantern Diner before sunrise. Fishing trips on weekends. Smaller freight contracts. Less money. Less pressure, too. One October morning, a young driver named Ethan Cole asked Marcus for advice about financing his first independent route. Marcus stirred cream into his coffee slowly before answering. Never mix guilt with money, he said. Ethan frowned slightly. What does that mean? Marcus looked out the diner window toward semis, rolling steadily across Interstate 44 beneath the rising autumn sun. It means if somebody makes you feel guilty for protecting what you spent your whole life building, he said quietly. Be careful. That evening, Marcus drove one of the older trucks westbound through Missouri, while orange sunlight stretched across endless fields beyond the highway. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing toward another disaster, wasn't rescuing anyone, wasn't sacrificing himself to keep broken people comfortable. And somewhere between Kansas City and the fading horizon, Marcus Whitmore realized something simple. He hadn't won his old life back. He had finally stopped losing himself,